In an earlier video, I noted that there was no general chip due to its many disadvantages. I was stretching the truth a little, since there are needs for such a chip. Look to your computer, and inside it will be a processor. The processor is responsible for many operations, such as how to handle the data it receives. It utilizes multiple peripherals such as RAM, disk, input devices, and more. Similarly, in our circuits, we have our specific chips designed to do specific things, like testing for distance or temperature. Yet we still need something to take that information and do something in response. Enter our MCU or microcontroller unit. But before that, let's look at how one would construct an MCU. The world around us operates in analog. Nothing can be finitely measured to the exact precision due to instrument uncertainty. But it makes it much easier to understand if we can quantize our numbers, or set a number to represent a range of values. Enter the digital world, in which everything is either 1 or 0. We often say that something is on or off, and that's our 1 or 0 respectively. In the electrical world, we find that it's easiest to do so by setting an arbitrary voltage and say anything above that voltage is on and anything lower is off. Thus begins our digital quest. So if everything is either on or off, the world would be kind of boring. It's hard to describe temperature with just hot and cold, so how would we represent integers from 0 to 100? If we have multiple lines, we could think of everything in base 2. Say we have 2 lines instead of 1 line. With 1 line, we can represent 2 states, on or off, but with 2 lines, we can represent 4 states. Using more lines leads to more states, and thus we can encode information. To encode information is to assign an arbitrary state to it, so it can be understood between modules. This is often how digital components talk to each other. So we can send lots of information to other people, but if you can't respond to information, you won't be able to do much. If my circuit element could not respond to any data, it would be a useless machine. In the circuit world, digital logic gives us that ability. If I get a certain input, I want the circuit to respond in a certain way. Through 3 components, the AND, OR, and NOT gates, we can construct any digital machine. These gates, or components, are mainly created through transistors, which you may have heard about in Moore's law. That's why manufacturers like to boast how many transistors can fit onto a chip, since this very loosely translates to the computing power of the chip for its size. As explained from previous videos, we can construct separate modules that can tell time, get the temperature, and so on. But it needs someone to link it all together, like a central hub. The MCU comes into play as the chip responsible for the digital logic. Programmers can flash code onto the MCU to directly interface with said modules and link them together based on their outputs. Thus, the MCU acts as like the processor to a computer. If you look into your MCU datasheet, it will describe many options, such as having digital and analog lines. It will clearly delineate what types of input and outputs can be accepted, since it would overcomplicate the MCU for having each pin being a general purpose pin. Since MCUs are so strong, they are also very delicate. Zapping loads of energy into an MCU will likely fry it, since it carries so much sensitivity with its generality. Thus, MCUs need to be powered very well, but also cannot supply power very well to other components, since not much energy is pumping through it. MCUs are often used together with transistors to open and close gates that give power to components that need a lot of energy, such as bright LEDs or motors.